Welcome, beautiful damsels. The most dangerous person in the room is the one who doesn't care who's watching. Ever noticed how people don't just dislike a woman who minds her business? They resent her. It's almost as if your ability to exist without begging for approval personally offends them. And maybe it does. Because here's a fact. Humans are wired to crave social belonging. Studies even show that rejection can activate the same brain regions as physical pain. So when a Sigma female walks in, minding her own business like she's got a VIP pass to life that no one else can access, it messes with their heads. You don't chase attention, yet you get it. You don't follow trends, yet you set them. And worst of all, you don't care if they like it. That's what truly drives them crazy. Because in a world obsessed with being seen, the one who refuses to play the game becomes the most unforgettable player of all. But don't worry, you're not alone in this. Let's break down exactly why your independence is their biggest insecurity. Number 1, your aura screams, "I know who I am." Most people build their identity around what others think of them. They shape their personalities, decisions, and even their ambitions based on external approval. But a Sigma female, she moves differently. She doesn't need validation to know who she is. That alone is enough to make people uneasy. When you walk into a room, your energy is clear. You're not trying to impress anyone, and you're not waiting for permission to exist. That kind of self-awareness is rare. It makes people question themselves. They wonder, how is she so sure of herself when the rest of us are constantly adjusting to fit in? The truth is, people find comfort in categories. They like labels, the loud one, the sweet one, the troublemaker, the follower. It makes interactions easier when they think they've figured someone out. But you don't fit into any box, and that frustrates them. They can't predict your moves, and that lack of control irritates them more than they'd ever admit. There's also an unspoken rule that people should signal their worth, whether through status, looks, achievements, or connections. But you don't play into that. You don't over-explain, overshare, or beg to be noticed. You just exist in your power. And the irony? That makes you stand out even more. People don't hate you because you're quiet, reserved, or independent. They hate that your confidence doesn't need their approval to exist, and deep down they wish they had the same freedom. Number 2, you are an untouchable force. Most people are easy to read because they constantly broadcast their need for approval. They dress, speak, and act in ways that ensure acceptance. But a Sigma female? She doesn't play that game. She moves on her own terms, never bending for unnecessary validation. That makes her unpredictable, and unpredictability makes people nervous. When someone can't control or categorize you, they don't know how to deal with you. Are you a leader, a rebel, a threat? They can't tell, and that unsettles them. Society thrives on putting people into boxes. You're either an alpha, a beta, or somewhere in between. But you don't fit. You follow no one, yet you don't need followers. You exist outside the hierarchy, untouchable and unaffected. This drives certain people crazy because they rely on labels to feel in control. They want to define you, pin you down, and make you easier to digest. But when they realize they can't, frustration sets in. You're like a code they can't crack, a player they can't predict, and nothing is more infuriating to those who crave power over others than someone who simply won't be controlled. They don't hate you because you're distant or mysterious. They hate you because no matter what they do, talk about you, challenge you, try to understand you, you remain unfazed, and that makes you a force they'll never be able to touch. Number 3, you starve narcissists to death. Narcissists survive on attention. Good or bad, it doesn't matter. They manipulate, provoke, and twist reality just to get a reaction. Most people fall for it because they either want to keep the peace or prove a point, but a Sigma female, she doesn't take the bait. She watches their games from a distance and refuses to play. This is where the real frustration begins. When a narcissist can't get a reaction out of you, it's like starving them. They poke, prod, and try to trigger an emotional response, but all they get is indifference. That's lethal to them. They need admiration or conflict to feel powerful, and you give them neither. You see through their flattery, ignore their attempts to control you, and walk away without explanation. To them, that's the ultimate insult. Your refusal to engage exposes something they never want to admit. They're powerless without an audience. Narcissists thrive on people who respond, whether it's arguing back, seeking their approval, or getting caught in their web of manipulation. You, on the other hand, make them irrelevant. You don't react, you don't defend yourself, and most importantly, you don't need them. This is why they hate you. You force them to face what they really are, empty without someone to feed off. And that realization? It's their worst nightmare. Number 4, you don't explain yourself, and that drives them crazy. Most people are conditioned to explain themselves, why they made a decision, why they said no, why they live the way they do. It's an endless cycle of justifying, defending, and seeking approval. But a Sigma female? She doesn't bother. She moves with purpose, makes her choices, and keeps it moving. No explanations, no long speeches, no validation seeking. And that infuriates people. When you refuse to explain yourself, it removes their sense of control. They can't pick apart your reasoning, twist your words, or argue with you. Your silence forces them to sit with their own insecurities. Instead of understanding you, they're left wondering, why doesn't she feel the need to justify herself? What does she know that I don't? That kind of self-assurance is unsettling to people who rely on social approval to feel secure. They push, they question, they try to make you second-guess yourself. But when you respond with nothing more than calm certainty, it shakes them. They expect defensiveness, over-explaining, maybe even guilt. Instead, they get a quiet, unshakable presence that says, I don't need you to understand me. And that's the ultimate power move. Because when you don't explain yourself, it forces them to confront an uncomfortable truth. They only demand explanations from people they think they can control. And you? You're not one of them. Number 5, you turn down power plays with ease. Power plays are everywhere, at work, in friendships, even in random conversations. Some people thrive on them, constantly trying to prove they're smarter, stronger, or more important. They poke, challenge, and test boundaries just to see if they can get a reaction. But when a Sigma female walks in, the game falls apart. You don't engage in pointless battles for dominance because you simply don't care. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. That kind of detachment is rare, and it frustrates those who rely on power struggles to feel superior. They push, expecting resistance or submission, but you give them nothing. Just a blank stare, a calm nod, or, worst of all, you walk away like they're not even worth your time. This infuriates them because power plays only work if both people participate. Without your reaction, they lose the control they desperately crave. They expect you to rise to the challenge, to argue back, to compete. But instead you make it clear that their little games don't interest you. That realization stings. It exposes something they don't want to admit, that their power only exists in the minds of those who acknowledge it. You don't reject authority, you just refuse to bow to ego-driven nonsense. And that makes people who thrive on control hate you, because no matter what they do, they can't pull you into their web. You see the game for what it is, and you refuse to play. Number 6, you're proof that independence doesn't need permission. Most people are trained to seek permission. Permission to speak up, to take risks, to live life on their own terms. They hesitate, waiting for society, family, or friends to give them the green light. But a Sigma female? She skips that part entirely. She doesn't wait for approval, she just moves. That kind of self-sufficiency is rare, and it makes people uncomfortable. They've spent their whole lives believing they need external validation to exist a certain way. So when they see you thriving without it, it messes with their reality. They question themselves. If she can just do what she wants without asking, why can't I? Instead of facing that hard truth, many choose the easier route. They resent you for it. You don't make independence look like some distant goal that requires permission from the world. You make it look natural, effortless, like breathing. That's what unsettles people. It forces them to confront the fact that the limits they follow aren't real, just rules they've accepted without question. And that's why they hate you. Because your very existence proves that they've been caging themselves all along. Number 7, you make fitting in look desperate. Most people spend their lives trying to fit in, following trends, adjusting their personalities, and bending their opinions just to be accepted. They convince themselves that blending in is the key to survival. that being part of the crowd equals success. But then you come along, completely unbothered, doing your own thing without seeking approval. And suddenly, their whole belief system feels shaky. You don't rebel just to be different. You simply don't see the point in forcing yourself into boxes that don't fit. You're not anti-society, you just don't let it dictate your every move. That subtle difference is what makes people uneasy. They expect you to crave the same validation they do. But when they see you thriving without it, they start questioning themselves. If she doesn't need to fit in, why do I? That's an uncomfortable realization. It forces them to confront the fact that maybe, just maybe, all their effort to belong wasn't necessary after all. Instead of facing that truth, many choose the easier option. They resent you for making them feel exposed. They call you distant, arrogant, or too independent because labeling you is easier than admitting they've been playing a game they didn't need to. You make conformity look like the desperate act that it is, and deep down, they know it. Number 8. You destroy the idea that women need to be seen and heard to matter. In a world obsessed with visibility, where women are often told that their worth is tied to being loud, outspoken, and constantly on display, you stand as a defiant contradiction. You don't need to be seen to be powerful, and that alone shakes up everything people think they know about status. You don't scream for attention or flood social media with your every thought and action. Instead, you command attention without asking for it, without even trying. That kind of quiet power is a concept many find hard to grasp. Society's narrative insists that to be relevant, women must be loud, visible, and constantly fighting for a seat at the table. But you've shattered that notion. Your presence speaks volumes without ever needing to utter a word. The silence around you isn't empty. It's filled with an unspoken authority that makes people pause and take notice. When people see that you don't rely on noise, drama, or constant validation to assert yourself, it disturbs their beliefs. They've been taught that attention equals power, that if you're not visible, you don't matter. You've turned that on its head. You don't have to be seen or heard to prove your worth. You simply are. And that, more than anything, is what drives them crazy. Because you're living proof that power doesn't come from making noise. It comes from owning your space without apology. Number 9. Your privacy is an unsolvable mystery. People are naturally curious creatures. They want to know everything about you, the details of your life, your thoughts, your plans. It gives them a sense of control, a way to connect or relate. But a Sigma female? You don't give them the satisfaction. You're an enigma, and that drives them insane. Your privacy is a fortress, and to them, it's an unsolvable mystery. You don't need to broadcast your every move, share your feelings, or let everyone in on your personal world. You keep your thoughts and emotions for the people you trust, leaving others to wonder what lies beneath the surface. That selective energy, the fact that you only give access to a few, is something they can't understand, and they hate it. It doesn't matter that you never invited them in. The mere fact that they can't access you leaves them feeling excluded. They start asking themselves, why not me? What's she hiding? It's this feeling of being left out, of not having the right to know, that gnaws at them. And in that gap, they start filling in the blanks with insecurity and jealousy. What they don't realize is that your privacy isn't about secrecy. It's about power. You don't need to explain yourself, share your world, or make anyone feel like they're part of it. You exist on your terms, and that's something they'll never be able to crack. That's why they hate you. It's not just that they're kept out, it's that they're never meant to be let in. Number 10. You refuse to be their emotional dumping ground. There's a certain expectation people have when it comes to emotional support, especially from women. They assume you'll absorb their stress, listen to their endless rants, and become their personal emotional sponge. After all, that's what society often teaches. Women are the caretakers, the nurturers, the ones who should drop everything to help others sort through their chaos. But a Sigma female, she doesn't play that game. You refuse to be anyone's emotional dumping ground. When people try to unload their problems on you, you don't immediately step in to fix things or take on their pain. Instead, you keep your boundaries firm. You're sympathetic, but you don't internalize their issues or make them yours. And that, more than anything, drives people crazy. They've been conditioned to expect that from you. And when you don't give it, they label you as cold or uncaring. What they don't understand is that you're not heartless. You just know your limits. You can't give your emotional energy to everyone who comes knocking, especially when they're not looking for solutions, only a free place to vent. You understand that absorbing others' chaos only drains you, and you've learned to protect your peace. But for some, this lack of emotional availability feels like rejection. They see it as a personal affront because you won't drop everything to play therapist, and that's exactly why they hate you. You don't let their emotional baggage weigh you down, and you don't let them make you their crutch. At the end of the day, being a Sigma female isn't about arrogance, rebellion, or some need to prove a point. It's about living life on your own terms, without bending to the expectations or emotional demands of others. You've mastered the art of independence, and in doing so, you've made people uncomfortable. Not because you're doing anything wrong, but because you're doing everything right, in a world that often insists you must fit in or be silenced. You don't need permission, attention, or approval to exist, and that alone makes you an unstoppable force. Your silence is louder than most people's noise, your power is not defined by visibility, and your boundaries are a fortress no one can breach. You challenge the status quo, and in doing so, force others to question their own lives and choices. And let's face it, that makes you both captivating and terrifying. In the end, it's not about making them like you. It's about making them see you for who you really are. An untouchable, unapologetic force that's not afraid to exist freely in a world that wants to control and categorize. And if they hate you for it, well, that's just their problem. You're too busy living life your way to care. If you found yourself captivated by the power and independence of the Sigma female, don't miss out on more thought-provoking content that challenges the norm and pushes boundaries. Hit that subscribe button and join a community of people who are done playing by the rules. Stay tuned for more insights that will make you rethink everything you thought you knew about success, power, and living life on your own terms. You're not here to fit in, you're here to stand out. Let's keep this journey going. Subscribe now. Thanks, damsels, for tuning in. See you in the next vid. Bye, and stay blessed.